Hi class, it's me, Seth Muller, your instructor for 101. I wanted to put together this rhetoric video for you. I meant to cover this in our class, but we got a little short on time given our community building. And that's totally fine by me. I would like to use some of our class time to really get to know one another, especially given the kind of work we do with peer review and other projects this semester. I think that'll be really important for us to feel like we have a classroom community. And kind of doing it digitally and doing it through video conference, just I think it's better to put a little more time on that we might even normally do in an in-person class. So I'm totally fine with that, but I do want to kind of run through some rhetorical concepts with you with this video. I hope you'll see it through, and hopefully it'll provide some clarity. For some of you, this will be a review. For some of you, it'll be maybe kind of new, and then maybe for others, it might be something you encountered, but it's been a long time since you've really looked at things rhetorically. So I'm hoping this video will kind of help at least give us a foundational understanding of what we're looking at. So your first big project is a rhetorical analysis, and it can be challenging to identify a text with strong rhetorical aspects. If you are having trouble with this, let me know, and I'm happy to help you out to find something. I also have set aside a few texts on reserve. If needed, if you just really need some help, I could actually provide you with maybe a couple of examples that would be really good to work with. Then you got to consider the rhetorical situation in which this text exists. And you'll hear me use the word text quite often to refer to the material that we are examining rhetorically. And then we have to unpack those rhetorical features. So that's a lot of work to consider. But we are also exploring and looking at rhetoric in different ways throughout our course during this module and during the rest of the semester. So we'll come back to this in different ways, so it's important to keep that in mind. So here's a brief video, brief-ish. I'll probably run a little long. But again, students have varying degrees of understanding of it. So I'm hoping this will be helpful. So why rhetoric and why are we doing this? I would ask that question if I were a 101 student. And really, I think it's just important to recognize that with rhetoric, we're placing a strong emphasis on it in this, and you'll see it in other writing courses, because it places significant skill in both your skills as a writer and reader. Think about like if you're going to write a letter of interest to an employer, and you might have to think about what that employer would want to hear from you and like how you would convince or persuade them to think differently. You might be applying for a scholarship, and again, same thing, you are trying to convince an audience using all of the possible rhetorical strategies and appeals at your disposal to do that. So we use these skills in day-to-day life, and I think this is just a way to recognize how rhetoric plays a role in all of that. It allows us to pull back the curtain on either a work we are creating or a text we're analyzing to understand how it was created and how the situation influenced it. All writing is persuasive in some way. I mean, we might be, even if it's informational, we might be trying to persuade readers that it's true. And we're trying to persuade our audience that our ideas, research, or analysis is sound and reasonable. So rhetoric lets us do that, and that's what why we're taking a look at that. So we're going to look at how we might think about rhetoric. So when you are looking at your piece of text, when you're looking at your text, whether that's commentary on sports or entertainment, or maybe something related to your field of interest, we're going to kind of look at 5 sides of the rhetorical situation. And sometimes you'll see it as 3. I think it's helpful to go to 5. The most important starting point is the author. So who's creating this text? How are they like establishing or identifying themselves in that creation? We all have different identities too, and so that could play a role in the way, say, an author is presenting themselves. If I'm a parent and I'm writing a parent blog, it might not matter that I've got, a PhD in child psychology, but if I've raised 4 kids, that might make a difference. So how is that author kind of representing themselves? Exigence is the what prompts the text or prompts the writing. So it could be an event, could be some kind of situation that the author is responding to. So we want to think about what that is. Of course, we do have an audience. So who is the author trying to write to? And that's really important to consider as well. Again, in a sports situation, are they appealing to the sports fans? Are they appealing to the players and the coaches? Are they writing to some other group to convince them of something? So we want to sort of think about that. A lot of times audience is implicit, and so we want to make a call in a rhetorical analysis. Who do we think this author is trying to reach out to? We also have genre and constraints. So if we think about something like a series of tweets, those are constrained by word count. If we look at even your commentary, and it's like typically a commentary might be 500 to 1,000 words, that's a constraint. The genre being like what it's being written in. So thinking about how this particular genres or constraints can play a role. And then the big thing we want to land is like, what's the purpose? So what is the author trying to do? How are they trying to convince the audience to take action, to think differently, to inform the audience of something they may not have thought of before? Maybe the author is trying to connect some ideas that the audience may have not considered. So we want to identify these aspects in our analysis in some way. So who the author, audience, and purpose are, and then what maybe the situation the author is dealing with in terms of what prompted the work, and then what is controlling or maybe affecting the text. Appeals, again, if you're familiar with rhetoric, you will probably have seen this before. Ethos is not ethics, so we want to make sure that's not part of it. Ethos is actually credibility, and how an author establishes credibility, or how an author convinces you that they are the person to tell you this, or they are the person that has the background to back up their ideas. Ethos too could just be, I spent X number of hours researching something, or I interviewed 50 people or something like that. That's the author, again, trying to establish credibility. So that's ethos. Logos is going to be anything related to logic, reasoning. Anytime an author brings in facts, data, hard evidence, we want to think of this as logos. We want to think of that in that category. And then we have pathos, and pathos is going to be emotion. So how is the author appealing to the audience's emotions, and where do we see that? And then two, we don't just want to say, this commentary contains lots of pathos. That's not really telling us much. What kind of pathos? Is the author trying to guilt the audience or shame them? Is it trying to make the audience angry? Is the author trying to make the audience sad? What kind of language or what kind of emotion is the language sort of prompting? And then finally, I want to add kairos, which is sometimes what we call right timing or timing. And that's anytime the author kind of appeals to, like, we need to act now, or we need to change now, or this is the time to do something. So if we see any reference to time, we want to sort of identify that and consider that kairos. As part of our rhetorical analysis too, I'm going to give you a few sort of rhetoric types in terms of use of language. And so we'll see that in a handout that I will also add to the Canvas shell. We'll talk a little bit about that in class as well, hopefully, if we can hold on to some time. And that's really just a sort of basic rundown of how we might think of rhetoric. And again, imagine you're looking at this text, and it's not just you're expressing an opinion on it, you're summarizing what it says. Here, you're thinking about the situation, and you're taking apart that situation in different ways. So sort of breaking down, who is this author? Who are they trying to write to? What is the purpose of what they did? How are they using different kinds of appeals to affect the audience, to achieve the purpose? And so your essay is really kind of breaking it down. You're bringing in evidence from that writing, and that pulls it all together. Well, that's all I had for this video. Thanks so much for your patience. I know sometimes watching these can be a little cumbersome, but I appreciate that. And if you have any questions, email me at seth.muller@coconino.edu.